All right, back with another edition of the A Different Kind of Power Rankings. I don't do this every week, just, usually every quarter of the season that passes, I tend to do it. I did it after week 4, doing it again here at the midpoint of the season. We'll probably do it again in another month or so. But yeah, if you've never seen this before, just real quick, try to explain it in as simple terms as possible. I used PFF grades to create an algorithm that gives each team a win total, and then I punched all the numbers in, and we see what comes out. Usually, some of the stuff is really interesting. Some of the stuff is just things I disagree with. It's definitely one that is not a perfect science, but it's still a fun thing to go over, I think. These are the numbers. If you get confused at all as to why a specific number is something, you can just go back in the video to here to compare it and see, where things rank. But this is what win total it is for each positional category for each tier that you get ranked into. So if you're a little confused, I'm sure you'll get it as we start going. Let's just get into it. Bottom 4 teams. We're going to go from the bottom to the top. Patriots it's rough. It's rough. I mean, there's some defensive stuff, but honestly, the defense hasn't played very good. The offense, all you get is a little bit of win totals from the running game right now. Projected for around 3 wins. Almost got there already against Tennessee, but that might be tough because Tennessee currently the second worst team as of right now. Also, not much in the offense. They get a little bit more defensively. Their coverage has definitely been a bright spot, and if they've stopped the run all right as well. It's kind of it, though, for them. The Raiders, who at least have some good receiving core stuff, and that's nice to see, and some offensive line stuff, and a good run defense. Again, it's kind of all they really have as of right now. Also, I meant to mention, I'm also not factoring kicking. Every team just gets a flat 0.42 just to even all that out, but not factoring that in. So good kicking teams would be a little bit higher. Bad kicking teams should be a little bit lower. But yeah, anyway, the Browns are also on this bottom tier. They've actually had okay quarterback play, largely due to that, some good Jameis Winston stuff. So tier 4 quarterback play that keeps them out of the bottom 3. Still not great. They stopped the run well. They pass rush well. They have not covered well, according to PFF, which is a bit of a surprise. Usually they do cover pretty well, but not this year. Also, again, not really much skill talent at all here for the Cleveland Browns. Next 4, how about the Carolina Panthers here at 28, not being on the bottom tier? They got to feel good about themselves for that. Still not a great team, but they've been covering all right lately. That has gotten better. Sometimes bad teams do get a little better. Tier 4 quarterback play instead of tier 5 quarterback play. That's, with some Bryce Young games in there. So, offensive line's blocked all right. Again, not a great team, but there at least is some value here with some of these teams. The Cowboys are, it's tough, right? It's tough with them. Tier 3 quarterback play out of Dak Prescott, it's not what they're paying for. Tier 4 wide receiver plays, CeeDee Lamb can't do it all alone. Offensive line struggled, though. Running games really struggled. And their defense has really struggled. They have tier 4 coverage unit, which actually is kind of shockingly high for me. It's just they're not a good football team right now. Usually they get better pass rush, but Parsons has been hurt, so that hurts things as well. So, yeah, that's where they are. The first real surprise on this list is 26, the Los Angeles Rams, who, despite the fact that they're, on a win streak, PFF has not been a fan of them, and the algorithm has not been a fan of them. They say that their defense stinks, which I don't really disagree with, but the wide receiving core still tier 2, and you got to remember, if guys are hurt, that hurts the algorithm, right? So if guys are injured, the algorithm doesn't factor that in. So it's fair to say they could be better. I think the biggest difference for me is I just don't agree with Stafford being a tier 4 quarterback this season. He has had his bad games for sure. I'd at least bump him up another tier, if not another 2 tiers. That would significantly change things. Offensive line obviously has had its injuries. They are a bit of a flawed team, but they also have great coaching, and they coach around those flaws. And again, the algorithm does not factor in coaching, so they're the first one I would disagree with here. The Dolphins, I think, are a better team now. they've just been so injured that this is why they, with the Tua injury, tier 4 quarterback play and tier 5 wide receiver play, because of the fact that, their backup quarterbacks haven't done a great job at helping out the receivers. They get some value defensively. They still have some issues there. Offensive line's blocked well this year, so I get why they're here. I think they're a better team than this now, but that's just because they're healthier now. Next 4, first we have the Saints, who, what a fall from grace they had. They were super high up last time I did this. Now they've completely fallen. PFF's a fan of Carr, actually. They really like what Carr has done this season. They don't like what the backups have done this season, so it all evens out to tier 3 quarterback play. Not a ton else, though. Again, there's a lot of areas where they do okay, but the only 2 zeros on the list are run defense and pass rush, which still matter, of course, but they at least get some wins everywhere else, but nothing major. Only over a win in 2 different categories, which is coverage and quarterback, and, it's only barely over that in coverage. So, yeah, they're not getting enough wins in the areas they need to be a competitive team right now. The Giants, who don't have a 0 anywhere on the board, but also only have 2 categories where they are over a full win. That's run defense, which is good, and coverage, which is tier 3, but coverage matters more than the other ones do. Tier 4 quarterback play, okay offensive line, but having its issues. Tier 4 wide receiver play, it's mostly Malik Neighbors. Running game hasn't been horrible, as maybe some people would say, but hasn't been ideal either. So, Giants, they're a flawed team. The Bills are definitely a shocker. Again, PFF's just never, the thing is, I think PFF grades are good. I like looking at PFF grades. They are not a foolproof system, and you are allowed to disagree with them. I feel like people almost have to say, they're either great or they're horrible. They can sometimes be just, a grading system that, like most grading systems, has its value and also has its cons. I don't agree with Josh Allen being a tier 3 quarterback. I think he's a tier 1 quarterback, and that's 2 wins right there. So then instead of being a 6.8 win team, they're a 8.8 win team. That's still very low compared to what you would expect, right? A big part of it is, again, PFF just hasn't been crazy about the Bills' coverage unit, and I kind of get why. They have given up a lot of points. So it's interesting. Last time I did this, I was like, wow, that's surprising, but Buffalo's playing so well, and then I think they got crushed by Baltimore the next week, and I was like, okay, well, maybe they know something I don't. Here, I do wonder, is there something that this algorithm knows that I don't, or is it just wrong? I don't know. I'll let you be the judge, I guess. But I do think it's fair to say, there are issues. The defense needs to play better if this team is going to go on a deep run. I think that's fair. But I don't know. They're playing so well. I disagree with this one, but I've been wrong before. And the algorithm's been wrong before and been right before. So we'll see what happens. I always point out, the year that the Bengals and Rams played each other in the Super Bowl, at the end of the year, when I did it, I was like, wow, this algorithm way too high on the Bengals and Rams. What's it thinking? And then those 2 teams played each other in a Super Bowl. So, you never know. 21, the Bears, who cover really well, don't do a lot else very well. Offensive line is not the issue that people think it is. Quarterback play hasn't been great. Receiving play hasn't been great. Running game hasn't been great. Defense is very good, but can only do so much if that's what you're at. They're still 7 wins, but need to get more out of Caleb Williams if they're going to be better than that. Next 4, we have the Jaguars, who are at 7.35 wins. So Jaguars, maybe not as bad as their record would indicate. And when I watch them, I kind of agree. Trevor Lawrence has had his ups and downs this season for sure. I think tier 3 quarterback play feels fair. Tier 3 wide receiver play, sure, I can understand that. Not a ton else that this team gives you, but you do have 4 different categories where you're getting over a win, and that's why that they're able to, at least be above kind of those bottom 10 teams. The Colts here, who are, again, not a great team. They block really well. They've gotten some stuff out of their receiving core, and their defense has started to play a lot better after starting slow. It's still just the quarterback play, which they made a move off of Richardson because he had played horrible, and then Flacco comes in and doesn't play well either, so that's a tough situation. The Broncos are lower than I think a lot of people would say, although still right around a halfway point, right? They're looking at kind of a 500 team, which I can kind of see. PFF has them as just a tier 4 quarterback play, but I would say Nix has, at his best, played better than that. So I think if you hope that he continues to grow, maybe you get an extra win out of that, and that puts you at a 9.5 win team. That gets you into the playoffs. That's probably what my take would be. Still don't get a ton out of their receiving core, but they block well and they have a very good defense. So yeah, that feels fair. The Packers have been covering really well. The front seven hasn't performed very well according to PFF. But tier 3 quarterback play, they wanted more than that. They wanted at least tier 2 quarterback play this season, I think, from Love. Just hasn't happened. Has made some flashes, has had some good games, has at times looked like a tier 2 quarterback. Just he's been inconsistent. Running game's been very good for them. That's tier 1. And the receiving core, graded low. This is another one where I think they're probably better than where the projection indicates, because I think LaFleur does a great job at getting the most out of these receivers. So even if they don't grade particularly great, I think they're probably better than this. You might look at another win or two with this roster, but they do need more out of, I think, Jordan Love, and they need more out of the front seven as of right now. Next 4, we have first a couple of teams, kind of really all these teams getting propped up by their quarterback play. Some tier 2, some tier 1. The bottom 2 are tier 2, with the Buccaneers and Cardinals shockingly similar, in fact, identical offensive grades between the two of these teams. A very good quarterback play, but both quarterbacks have had kind of the occasional lower game, which has just prevented them from being able to get up to tier 1, but still very good. They block very well. The receiving core has had its ups and downs. Now, Arizona, it's kind of in different ways. Arizona had their injuries early on and kind of feels healthier now, and you could even see that getting better. Tampa Bay, the other, the opposite. Obviously, losing Godwin and Evans has hurt that recently, but Evans should be back before too long as well. So, that they at least get one of those guys back. As for the Cardinals defense, they stop the run all right, and they don't cover great. Tier 4, which in fairness is an upgrade from what we've seen in years past. It has been competent, but that's kind of the best you could say. And they don't rush the passer very well. So they blitzed very well against Chicago, but in terms of just winning one-on-ones, not so great at it. But hey, sometimes you got to find ways to coach it and make it work. It's what they did against Chicago. For Tampa Bay, their run defense has shockingly been very poor this year. Turns out Vita Vea can't do it all himself. And the coverage actually maybe hasn't been as bad as people realize, but the issue is it's been spotty, where they've usually covered half the field very well. Zion McCollum has done a great job at being a cover corner, but teams don't have to throw at him because the other side of the field is usually wide open. So that's been an issue. Pass rush okay, but not good enough. So they're at 9 wins. We'll see if they can step it up. If either of those two teams can step it up and become a playoff team. Cincinnati's kind of in a similar boat where they are, don't have a great record as of right now. Burrow is playing fantastic football. He's been a tier 1 quarterback according to PFF. Receiving core had some injuries, has not been 100%, has not been as dominant as we've seen in the year that they went to the Super Bowl, for example. Coverage has been okay, and the run defense has been good. They just don't rush the passer. So that's their biggest defensive issue right now. And then offensive line also not good. So not really struggling in the trenches right here. We'll see. The algorithm does not say they are a bad team. Usually you'd think the top 14 teams make the playoffs. So the algorithm has them as a fringe playoff team. We'll see if they can get in. And then the Balls, who are the Washington football team, which is a running joke that Kyle started 4 years ago, and it's still going for some reason. But again, Daniels, tier 1 quarterback play, that's going to help out a lot. Tier 2 receiving play also helps out a lot. Offensive line blocks well enough. Defense has not done a ton for them this season, but I will say this, it has gotten better as we've gone along. So that's the reason for optimism if you're a Washington fan. Can it continue to improve, and could you be more than just a 10-win team? If not, they're still going to win more than 10 games because they started off so strong, so they're still certainly a playoff team either way. Next, for couple of surprises. I think the biggest one is the Seahawks. For me, there's 2 very big surprises, I would say. Seahawks are a big surprise as you have tier 1 quarterback play from Geno Smith, which I don't think I agree with. I think Smith has played very well this year and done a lot of really good things. He's also had his down moments, especially in the end zone against the Rams last week. Still some good things to like about him, though. But yeah, Seahawks as a whole, they cover okay, but their defense hasn't been great. It's mostly just their receiving play and their quarterback play that has gotten them to here, but still at 10.24 wins, it's no guarantee of a playoff spot. The Jets, another real surprise with their Tier 2 quarterback play with Aaron Rodgers, Tier 3 receiving play, and that's probably only going to get better with more Devontae Adams playing time. Tier 1 coverage, which is a bit of a surprise to me because we've seen it have its off moments. Now, the run defense hasn't graded great, but if you can cover well, you can win games in the NFL, and we'll see. I mean, hey, the Jets were able to beat the Texans, who are one spot ahead of them. Maybe they're better than we realize. I don't know. Texans, who are one spot ahead. CJ Stroud's just been a Tier 3 graded quarterback this season. I think they want more out of that. We can debate if they've gotten more out of that or not. The receiving core is so banged up, though. Without Nico Collins, they need him back. Diggs isn't coming back, but at least if Nico Collins comes back, I think that'll help out because it's graded at Tier 2 right now, and with a Tier 2 coverage unit as well, and they do get help with their run defense and their pass rush. They're a very good team. They just need Nico Collins back, I think. And maybe a little bit more out of CJ Stroud, although that's debatable. Number 9, the Chiefs, who are always an interesting team on this list, right? They're the only undefeated team left. Tier 2 quarterback play from Mahomes. And to be honest, how it's worked this season, I don't necessarily disagree. Tier 1 offensive line, though, that's very good to see. Part of it is, they run block very well. Their interior is so good, but they've gotten more out of their tackles as the season has progressed as well. Tier 1 run defense, only Tier 3 coverage, but they scheme it up so well that usually if there are issues, teams don't notice it until they're already getting hit in the face by a blitz. So what are you going to do? Also, Tier 1 pass rush, that certainly helps. So having that, Tier 3 wide receiving play, despite the fact that people talk about their receivers being bad, it's been all right. But, again, the Chiefs want a Super Bowl. They don't want to be the 9th best team in football. I think they can do it, though. That they're so well coached, and Mahomes is going to be Tier 1, probably a tier above Tier 1 once you get to the playoffs. So, can never count that team out. But as of right now, the analytics don't suggest they've been dominant, which I think matches the eye test. But they keep winning, so they don't care. Next, for a couple of, I think, mild surprises here, you have the Vikings, who, I don't know if that's a massive surprise. I mean, they have a very good record. Tier 3 quarterback play from Darnold, but Tier 1 wide receiving play, and Tier 3 coverage unit, but it's also been coached so well. Tier 1 run defense. PFF doesn't love how they've pass rushed in terms of winning their one-on-ones, but they're still well coached enough that they can still make it work. So, and then Tier 1 offensive line. The Darisaw injury is going to hurt that. It just is. I know they brought in another guy, but it hurts. It does. So, they're a good team. PFF says definitely a playoff team, maybe not a Super Bowl team. That's at least what the algorithm says that I used, I created using PFF data. The Steelers are next on the list, who they cover really well. They pass rush really well. Tier 1 run defense and pass rush, and then Tier 2 coverage. That's the team right now. This is a great defense. Receiving core, Tier 2. That's pretty good. Quarterback play, Tier 3. Okay, you can work with that. Might be better if Russell Wilson gets more playing time. As of right now, that's where it is. They don't block incredibly well. That's probably the biggest weakness of this team. But Steelers doing a lot well. This is a team that, going through years past, historically massively underperformed in this algorithm. Usually we, a 5-win team that's winning 9 games. Now they're a 12-win team, and they might win 12 games. I mean, this is very good to see if you're a Steelers fan. Usually they did not perform very well in this in these rankings, but here they are. The Falcons are interesting with 6th best right now. Tier 1 receiving play, Tier 1 running back play, and Tier 2 quarterback play. That's going to get you a lot, especially with Tier 2 coverage. I mean, this defense, who I've said I think at times hasn't played great, and you see no pass rush, that's a big issue. But still, when the coverage is doing what it can. I mean, as long as you can get some semblance of a pass rush going, the coverage holds up long enough. It gives time for the pass rushers to get there. There's a lot to like about this Falcons team. They are very good. The Chargers, who PFF has Herbert as, I believe, the 5th best quarterback in football, which top 5 make Tier 1. So there you go. Tier 1 quarterback play and Tier 1 coverage. this is not a perfect team across the board, right? Like tier 3 receiving play, which is, I think, still better than we would have thought going into the year, but still. Also, tier 2 run defense, that's very good. But, the pass rush has maybe been underwhelming given the guys they have on the roster. The run game, it's been very effective, even though the PFF grades don't love it because of how well they scheme this stuff up. So they actually get maybe a little more value out of that. So yeah, PFF's buying in. 13-win Chargers team. We'll see how that works out. I think part of why Herbert's a tier 1 quarterback right now is I think he's in a bit of an easier situation, and I think that makes his, the grading look a little better. That's just my personal opinion. I don't know if I'd quite had the Chargers this high. I do agree, though, that they're a very good team. Finally, top 4. This is what we're all here for. Half of you probably just skipped ahead to see the top, right? But you got to save it for last. The 49ers are 4th, which is definitely going to surprise a lot of people. PFF has tier 1 receiving play out of them still, even with all the injuries. Tier 1 coverage and tier 2 quarterback play. Yeah, that's going to get you into the top 4 teams, even if you don't get a lot else. And they do get some else. Tier 1 offensive line as well. Not a ton in the pass rush mostly is just Nick Bosa doing it himself. Run defense, they don't get a ton there. But again, we also know the running game, even if the value of the running back isn't that high, it's the Shanahan scheme. It's going to be higher than that. So yeah, PFF says don't be worried about their record. The algorithm, I should say, says don't be worried about the record. There's still some good things to like about them. The Eagles are another team where it's like you have that tier 1 coverage unit, which it's, again, you get over 4 wins if you can get that. It's so valuable. They have a tier 2 wide receiving play, just tier 3 quarterback play, but what separates them is their pass rush and their run defense, which is adding an extra win that, in each of those categories to what San Francisco gets. So, 2.5 wins for their front 7. This defense, tier 1 pass rush, I believe tier 3 run defense and tier 1 coverage, that's a huge turnaround from last year. It just is. So even if the offense, when A.J. Brown's been in and out of the lineup, that's, it's slowed down a bit, still been very good. Weirdly, not tier 1 running back play. I'm assuming that's less about Barkley and more about some other guys. But it's also, again, it's hard. You got to be top 5 to be tier 1, so it is difficult. The top 2 teams have tier 1 running back play, including a lot else. Let's start with Baltimore, who has tier 1 quarterback play, tier 1 offensive line, tier 1 wide receiver, and tier 1 rushing. Tier 1's across the board offensively. That's crazy that this team isn't number 1 in the power rankings. They're close. 14.86 wins usually gets you number 1 in these power rankings. They also have tier 1 run defense, and even the coverage and pass rush isn't bad. Tier 2 coverage and then pass rush, you still get some value out of that. So their defense hasn't been great this year, but it's been all right. According to PFF, it's really just that the Lions are just a little bit better. So ton of value with the Ravens, but really the Lions getting another 2 wins in coverage is the difference. Over 15 projected wins for this Detroit Lions team. That might be low because they only have 1 loss so far. Here's how they get there. Actually, tier 2 offensive line, which is a little surprising. Tier 3 quarterback play with Jared Goff. The Lions fans will be mad. Listen, I've watched every Jared Goff snap. I'd probably have him tier 2, but I don't disagree that much with it. I get it, because, definitely this offense he's a cog in the machine, but still an important one. This receiving core has been awesome. The running game has been awesome. And then, the coverage being tier 1, that's what a turnaround from last year when that was their biggest weakness. Now being tier 1, that's huge. They still get, I think the one thing you look at, and this would be the difference between them being number 1 in the power rankings and number 2, is the pass rush, which is currently tier 1. There's no doubt about it. Even with adding Zadarius Smith, that's at least a tier down when you lose Aiden Hutchinson. And that would be, again, that would be about a win total difference, which I think is fair. I think Hutchinson is a win total difference player. And that now puts you behind Baltimore in the power rankings. But gotta just say what it is for now. Who knows? Maybe Zadarius Smith comes in and plays super awesome. He'll play well for them. We'll see how it works out. But yeah, those are my thoughts on the power rankings. Always a fun video. I feel like I always learn a lot, even if it's, I don't necessarily agree with every little thing. Let me know in the comments below. What do you disagree with, or what do you agree with? Always love hearing from y'all. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.